What up, football fans, and welcome to another edition of the ONETA Football Show, brought to you by PT Creative. I am your host, Evan Davies, as always. Fortunately, we're calling an audible day, but we still got a great show ahead. Originally, this was going to be big board time, which I was going to unveil my top 25 players in the NFL draft. Life decided, not so much, bro, but I'm mighty close. That episode is still coming, so we're going to push big board back 1 week, and we're going to push Mock Draft 1.0 back 1 week. Following that, we're going to do a couple shows based on prospect rankings or ideas coming out of the draft, and of course, news and notes coming out of the NFL during that time. However, we have a great show today because I'm going to go over our top 5 wide receiver rankings. I did a good deep dive into the 2024 wide receiver class, which is stacked. Stacked, I tell you. And when I say that, I truly mean it because there are quite a few players that I think are first round worthy. I'll mention some names as I can, but I'm going to give you a top 5 ranking. Also, if you are watching this via YouTube, you should know by now my quarterback ranking video was corrupted, unfortunately. So that didn't give you a YouTube version of the show last week, but it is available to our audio listeners over on Spotify. And even though we just launched Spotify, this is not a grand conspiracy to try to get Spotify numbers up. It's simply put, hey, video didn't want to work out. So I'm going to do a recap, a shorter recap, because I don't want to rehash the entire thing again. But I'm going to do a recap of the top 5 quarterbacks of the 2024 class as well. So we are going to get rolling right away into our top 5 receivers of the 2024 NFL Draft class. So here we go. On screen right now, our YouTube viewers can watch, see what I've got. At the number 5 position, an interesting pick that a lot of people see as a second round guy or a very late first round guy. I see as a mid first round guy. And that, my friends, is Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman of Florida State. Now, when I have Keon Coleman here, we have a player who is junior, 6'4", 215. He has probably the best size of any player coming out in the draft class with the skill set available to him. And that was a big thing for me. You're going to see a lot of speed-based guys. You're going to see a lot of guys coming through that don't have as much size, but they have a lot of explosive speed. You're seeing a lot of guys that have more size, but they don't have the explosion. That doesn't mean they're bad receivers. Keon Coleman, I think, is the best of the bunch with the big playability, but also the size components that I love to see in a true outside X receiver by himself. With Keon Coleman, you are going to get a player who, honestly, the first note I have on him is I absolutely adore Keon Coleman. His size and frame is outstanding. I love the height and his use of his body with good body positioning, control up in the air, or just running a route with that size of a frame is incredibly impressive. I really, really appreciate the way he does things on the football field under control with his height and speed. Size. If you high point a ball near him, he's going to come down with it. I literally have the note, high pointing the ball is ungodly reliable with him. I love big-bodied receivers that can come through at the high point of a ball and take it square out of the air and take control. I love players like that, which is why I really like Keon Coleman's game. Contested catches are very easy for him. He has more shift and elusiveness than he's given credit for as a runner. And he has really effective experience as a punt returner, which is only going to be more important in today's game. With the kicking game changing, it's going to be more towards returners, so maybe he becomes a kick returner as well in that scenario, because it's kind of like a punt in that way with the new arrangements. But he has effective skill as a punt returner. He's very athletic. He has really good play speed and a complement of routes to go with it, but he needs development on the route tree. He's really effective at all three levels of the play. So short, intermediate, deep, he's effective on all of those. And those are the things I really like about him. Giving an honest assessment about him, the biggest thing people are going to knock is the speed. But the play speed is a lot better than a 40 time. We talked about this about a month or so ago with one of the Combine News and Notes podcasts that we did. And everyone was coming out, oh, he's got to run faster, he's got to run faster, he's got to run faster. He plays way faster than his 40 time. When he's on tape, he plays way faster. The separation isn't perfect, but the speed is there. So the speed truly is not really that big of a concern for me, because I also think the size and the skill set will also help some of those speed problems that he has. He does need a little bit more development as a route runner. I'd like to see more routes out of the route tree from him, but you don't see a ton of them from the Florida State offense. But those are very minor knocks to me, who is a mid-first round player. To those that can watch Keon Coleman and see a second or even possibly lower because of biased reasons such as not enough speed, I don't understand that evaluation. I adore Keon Coleman, and it forced me when I have my big board. I'm about 20 players in with my big board, where I'm very happy with the evaluation and confident in what I have. I have other players in mind. I have seen tape of other players, so the big board's pretty close to done. But I want to be very effective with the big board. Keon Coleman, I can almost guarantee you, is going to be on my top 25. A, it's a great reflection of the receiver class, but B, I just think Keon Coleman can be a star in the NFL level. That's a big deal to me, because you're playing NFL football. You need guys that are tough, that are sized well, go get the ball and attack against the best of the best corners on the planet, the best of the best safeties. You need to be able to go do that. Crossing routes against linebackers, you need to go be able to be an athlete, go make a play. Keon Coleman does that. So number 5 on my wide receiver rankings this year is Keon Coleman out of Florida State. I really, really, really adore Keon Coleman, I must say. Number 4. This is kind of consensus at this point for many people. I'm not going to lie to you and say, like, oh, you're going to see so many prizes. You're not. Keon Coleman's the biggest surprise of the top 5 for many people. Number 4, I have Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. So Brian Thomas Jr., I'm just going to give you some measurables here. Out of LSU, he's junior. He's 6'4", he's 205. He's a bit lankier and slighter of frame than Keon Coleman. So the 6'4" is great. I love the height. But the 205, it's true. It's not as if it's not a true size. But there's just a slight bit more of a frame where you're like, I'd like to see a hair bit more, just from the size that he truly possesses. However, again, I love the height and I love the size for the most part. Just wish the frame was a little bit bigger. The explosion off a cut is tremendous, and he has a phenomenal vertical stretch route. And when I say vertical stretch routes, when you are pushing vertically on a post, on those big intermediate dig routes, or just doing those go patterns thing, he's phenomenal at stretching the defense as a big time deep threat. I really like that about Brian Thomas Jr. His separation on intermediate and deep routes is incredibly impressive. Hands are very good. They aren't, I would say of my top 5, he probably has the worst hands of the 5. But you're picking at hairs, in my opinion. You're picking at straws trying to really do that. Because his hands are still very good. Contested catch situations are made to look easy. He has really good body control in the air or in confined space. That sideline, when he knows how to work a sideline really well, he knows how to pinpoint to get those back shoulder balls. He knows how to play up in the air and come down with both feet in on a routine basis. He was making NFL catches when he only had to make college level catches. And it was really, really impressive when he was able to do that. And his second move acceleration is incredibly impressive. His ability to pivot, turn, and blast off is great. And he has a really nice release off the ball when the start of the play happens. I think personally, through my evaluations, I saw him play through more contact than even another member of this top five group, Malik Neighbors. But I don't see a lot against press coverage. I saw a lot of the LSU receivers receive straight up free releases where no one touched them. It made no sense to me why you had guys with so much speed just being able to run free. That made zero sense to me. The only teams that really pushed them with contact early was kind of Alabama. And it showed, and there's a reason Alabama at the end of that game, the score was what it was, because Alabama understood physical defense and had the players to play with the speed and affect it. So I didn't see a lot of press coverage against Brian Thomas Jr., which I'd like to see more. But he has elusiveness with the ball in his hands. He's a playmaker, and just one hell of an athlete at the wide receiver position. I would, like I said, like a little bit more frame. The hands, I don't think need work, but he's going to get better at the NFL level at that for the most part. But the hands are still very good. I'm not concerned with the hands. And I'd still like to see more versatility in the route tree. Again, LSU, their offense seems very much kind of like we're going to go out athlete you. We're not going to be clinical, so to speak. So that is something that I would like to see development out of. But I really like his play through contact and his body control and the explosion of an athlete. Brian Thomas Jr. has that all day long. I think I would be completely fine, and my grade is a top 15 player. I think Brian Thomas Jr. belongs in that 10 to 15 range. And if you see the early run on wide receivers, let's say there isn't a big trade up for J.J. McCarthy, and you get tackles coming off the board a little bit earlier than are suspected, I wouldn't be shocked if Brian Thomas Jr. went as high as 11, 12, or 13. Not saying they're going to go to the teams that have 11, 12, or 13, but I would not be shocked if he went that high because he's a very talented receiver. And the explosion that Brian Thomas Jr. has is going to make him extremely attractive to coaches and scouts in the NFL with that size he possesses. So, again, hell of a player, and he is number 4 on this year's rankings for me. Number 3, and I don't even like to say 3. I'm just going to skip 3 to a degree. I have a 2A and a 2B. Because to me, you are splitting hairs. You are picking at straws between the next two. I will go with 2B, but tell you I think I like 2B more than I like 2A. I'll get into that. But 2B is Rome Odunze out of Washington. Odunze, junior, 6'3", 215, out of Washington, played in a really, really nice offense to showcase what he can do. He's really good body control, plays well through contact. He's a physical, tough sumbitch. Great hands. He has a good release off the ball. His nice speed at the snap going through. Really appreciate that. He's very, very competent in a contested catch situation, but has that really nice long speed where he can stretch the field and be a true danger downfield. And he has nice crisp route running to his ability. I love this in the modern NFL, seeing notes and seeing what you can see as a scout that may not be part of something. He runs it's very niche, but he runs a very good, convincing, really specific rub route. Being able to be the decoy for a rub route where it is not pass interference. It's as close as you can get while still making a true argument that, hey, we're going to run a pick play, but it's not a pick play kind of thing. So he runs that extremely convincingly. He's a really quality release off of a press or off coverage. It doesn't matter if he's getting space to release or if he is being pressed immediately, he's going to get a really good release. I really like that. I do like his size a lot, and his frame is built for Sunday football. I really don't have a negative note about Rome Odunze. He's just not he has explosion to his game. that he's not going to get credit for because Malik Neighbors is going to be Mr. Explosion in this draft. But it's not as if you're picking a schlub if you get Rome Odunze instead. I can very easily say Rome Odunze can be argued as the number 2 receiver in this class and not the number 3, but a lot of people are going to say Rome Odunze is the 3. Which is why I'm saying it's a 2A and a 2B situation for me. It's not a 3. I'm going to save a little bit of the Odunze talk for a comparison with 2A. And that would be, as I just stated, Malik Neighbors out of LSU. So the measurables on Neighbors, he's 6 foot, 200 pounds, out of LSU. Really nice quick release. He has good height for a modern receiver. It's not crazy, but it's good enough height, especially with the explosion, to still be quite a big factor. Speed is great, and the acceleration out of cuts is tremendous. And the acceleration after the catch with the ball in his hands, whew, it's the most impressive of the class. You cannot argue that point while watching tape that the acceleration with the ball in his hands, Malik Neighbors is better than anybody else in this class with the ball in his hands on an explosion. He has good hands. He has very nice body control in the air to be able to come down in a confined space to get those toe taps in. Really appreciate. Again, he's very good at stretching intermediate and deep routes. He does have more he has better route running, in my opinion, really crisp route running than his teammate Brian Thomas Jr. But again, it's LSU, so it feels very much we're going to out-athlete you sometimes. It's not like an NFL complement of routes, in my opinion. But he has more variety in his game, to me, than Brian Thomas Jr. He does have contested catches, but it's not going to be... He doesn't have any of those, whoa, I can't believe he made those catch in a contested situation. But he has contested catches where he's going to play tough and get through. Again, he's great with the ball in his hands, and he's extremely elusive and slippery as a runner. And he's very fluid when he makes a cut in a route. Makes it look incredibly simple. One thing, if you go back a couple years to the wide receiver class of Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, and Jalen Waddle, I was constantly comparing, again, Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. I think, I believe at the time I was higher on Devontae Smith, but I would argue now Jalen Waddle's the better of the two in the NFL. But Malik Neighbors moves in a very Devontae Smith kind of way. I brought that comparison up specifically because of this. When I was looking at the tape of Smith and Waddle coming out, it was insane how different the two moved, but the speed was there. Jalen Waddle is a little bit faster than Devontae Smith, but when Jalen Waddle runs, it's like a Tron bike. It looks like bing, bing, bing. Very corner-based, bam, bam, bam. You can see it like very angular, very straight-lined, insane route running, very much like a Tron bike out of the movie. Whereas Devontae Smith, when I saw him run routes, I compared it to the artistic version of like the curvature of a woman, where it's extremely smooth, silky going through, and the curvature of a route is so smooth and fluid in his route running, where the route running of Jalen Waddle is very crisp, angular, to the point. And it was insane to me watching the two of them play that tape out. So when I watch Malik Neighbors, I'm seeing the fluidity and the smoothness of a Devontae Smith, who I don't think anyone can call a bust whatsoever in the NFL. The Neighbors Odunze conversation to me is this. Without question, the more explosive and outwardly fast player is Neighbors. That's, I don't think, arguable for somebody. However, there is just this very tough, gritty way of coming down in a contested catch situation or just body angle making these ridiculously difficult catches that Roma Dunze has the ability to make, and the toughness in which he makes crossing routes across the middle, that I think personally from a play style, I think I could see myself liking Roma Dunze more than Malik Neighbors. But when I evaluate the tape and see what Malik Neighbors can do versus Roma Dunze can do, I think I have to say Malik Neighbors is probably the better idea of a pick and a prospect. But if you forced me to bet between the two who's going to be better, I think that's going to be Roma Dunze. But that again, we're splitting hairs. We are really getting nitpicky in what we like. But I really like the size, speed, toughness combination of Roma Dunze personally a little bit more than I like the straight line finesse style that Malik Neighbors plays his game with. But again, they're both incredibly talented players that I do think have a very bright future in the NFL, both of them. And I'm not happy with the idea that either of these guys could be going to Chicago to help Caleb Williams when they're playing in my favorite division, the NFC North, against my beloved Green Bay Packers. So it's going to be hell to pay for whoever shows up in Chicago to go help Caleb Williams, Packer perspective. And these two are both special. And I think they're different. And when you're forced to rank them 1, 2, 3, it's kind of a disservice to either one because they have a different way of play. But they're both incredibly effective and can do different things at an equal level of what they're doing. If that makes any logical sense, which I don't know if it truly does, but nonetheless, that is what I go with. 2A and 2B, and 2A would be Malik Neighbors, 2B would be Dunze. And which is why I ordered it that way. And finally, it's going to sound chalk because it is, and that's okay because sometimes chalk is just correct. In my opinion, the number one receiver in this draft is Marvin Harrison Jr., and to me, it's not close. Malik Neighbors and Roma Dunze are extremely talented players, and they are of an extremely high tier of play and really good prospects. I have top 10 grades on both Roma Dunze and Malik Neighbors. They're phenomenal players. When it comes to Marvin Harrison Jr., he's the only player I think can be argued could compete for the number one spot as a prospect over Caleb Williams. And Caleb Williams is a potentially top one of one prospect coming out of college ever at the quarterback position. Marvin Harrison Jr. He's coming out of Ohio State as a junior. He is 6'4". He's 205. And he is quite possibly the best wide receiver prospect I've ever watched. I have known Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be great for at least 2+ years now. Watching his tape with CJ Stroud and making even the current McCord, I think, at Ohio State, making him look functional, who I don't think is functional at all, is a huge testament to how good Marvin Harrison Jr. is. First and foremost, the easiest way to put it is this. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the most complete wide receiver prospect I think I've ever evaluated in my time evaluating prospects in the draft. There were other players I absolutely adored. I absolutely loved. I couldn't argue I loved Jamar Chase. I loved Henry Ruggs. I did really, really like Justin Jefferson. I was too much into the Chase play. There are guys that I love every year at the wide receiver position. There is not a single player I would say is more complete than Marvin Harrison Jr. He's the total package at the wide receiver position. His height, he has size, he has speed. But specific notes. His body control in a contested situation, close to the end zone, close to the sideline, going up for a ball, and being able to focus, take the ball in, and control his body in ungodly ways is unparalleled. I have never seen body control on a wide receiver more than I've seen it Marvin Harrison Jr. His size, but specifically his height, is tremendous. He does not have the same lankier frame that looks somewhat slender like a Brian Thomas Jr. does. He's not Keon Coleman built with that extra 10 pounds, but he still has a good NFL build to him. He is a great creator of separation through route running. His speed is not what's going to give him just straight natural separation, but he's going to create that through route running, which is high level NFL stuff. He has great hands. His cut and pivot ability on a route is great. His ability to make that one cut, make the route special is great. His ability to do pivot routes or get the ball in his hands and pivot to go do something with the ball in his hands is great. Contested catches are made to look easy with him. He's great at all three levels of play in short, intermediate, and deep routes, as I said with Keon Coleman as well. He succeeds through enormous amount of contact and press situations. It doesn't matter if you harass him at the line of scrimmage or many plays where he should have been getting a call and he did not. He was playing through enormous amounts of contact and was still succeeding through them to be great. He's a more elusive runner than he's given credit for. He's a very smooth runner. And he has the rare ability that even great players don't possess at times. The best of the best do. There are players at every position throughout NFL history that have a rare ability to take a game over. Where the game, and it's not just like, oh, they had that game where they played the game of their life. No, they have the ability to consistently take over a game, and when the ball is in their hands, the game changes because they are imposing their will upon the game. You can watch, it's kind of like, again, I'm not comparing Marvin Harrison Jr., a wide receiver prospect, to, in my opinion, the greatest quarterback to ever play the game in Patrick Mahomes. But there's a similar quality in terms of when Mahomes has the ball at the end of the game, you understand he's going to impose his will and become the Michael Jordan of football, where he's going to close out a game. You know he's going to do it. He's going to impose his will, and the Chiefs are going to win the game. Marvin Harrison Jr. has those qualities. If you would like to see further, go watch the 22 Georgia game. Georgia does not look, if Marvin Harrison Jr. is still in that game and is not injured, Georgia does not win that game and does not get a second straight national championship. I promise you that. The score showed it, but more importantly, the play on the field showed it. And it was consistently get the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr., making a great play. Oh my God, this play's dead. It's going nowhere. Don't worry, throw it to Marvin. He's going to make a play. He's going to go be the guy. He's going to take over the game. And Georgia had zero answers, and Georgia is one of the best college defenses consistently in the last 5 years we've ever seen in college football. Georgia is stacked with first round and second round talent at defense for the last couple of years. And Marvin Harrison Jr. made them look like chumps. His ability as a complete receiver is unparalleled in my opinion. And I truly believe he's the best wide receiver prospect I've ever watched. I really started getting into draft analysis. I've always loved it, and I've always watched it and cared about it, but my time as a scout over the last 5-6 years, really trying to break down tape, watch what I'm, see and understand what I'm watching as opposed to just go, oh, okay, that's great or that's bad, and really try to analyze the tape. I have not seen a better wide receiver prospect in my entire studies than Marvin Harrison Jr. He's not the most explosive. It's not as if he doesn't have flaws. He has flaws just like every other prospect. He has a few more drops than I would expect, but they were difficult catches or concentration drops, which usually happens to the best of us, but they're not glaring in any way, shape, or form. And his 23 tape, there were times he wasn't quitting on his team because that's a very unfair comparison. But it was very abundantly clear he was moving on to the next level and he had to make it through the season. But in no way, shape, or form did I think he dogged it, didn't care, didn't try. He was. It just wasn't the 22, I'm going to go wreck every game possible, Marvin Harrison Jr., because he still had that kind of tape in 23. It just wasn't the same consistency level as 22. He doesn't have the same explosion as Neighbors or even Brian Thomas Jr., but he has explosion. He's not as elusive as Malik Neighbors, but he's a more complete player with better size, better body control, my opinion, better hands, and more ability to take over a game. And he's a tough son bitch too. And this is where lineage to me does matter, pedigree does matter. I'm not always a big believer in pedigree unless it's very reasonable. You're talking about the genetics and work ethic of one of the top 5 to 10 receivers in NFL history, and he's lived it his entire life. To the point where he went in and from every combine, when you actually hear the notes of the combine and don't just hear the, oh my god, he skipped the media, what's the problem? It's a headline making story. The context is, I don't think there's another player who's ever done as good of a prep season for himself coming into the draft to actually succeed at the NFL level better than Marvin Harrison Jr. has in recent memory. And what I mean by that is, didn't run at his pro day, or didn't really run routes, didn't run at the combine, didn't do any on-field workouts at the combine. He skipped the media at the combine, and everyone is what's going to make a story out of it. But when you actually listen to what happened and hear the reports of what happened, he went in, he talked to the teams that requested to speak with him that are realistic targets for him to do, but wasn't standoffish in any way, asked all of them, hey, what do you need from me? They all said nothing. He was given the things they might need from him, which is what he went and did, which is why he worked out with some of the offensive line group, or the defensive line group possibly. I can't remember which one it was, which is a completely different group than you normally would do. Interviewed with the teams again. He's still working on an internship, but apparently he has not done any combine work whatsoever because he's not trying to ace a combine. He's trying to go be the best pro football player can be, so he's working on a pro football regimen the entire time. Is that a luxury that he has being as talented as he's been for the last 2 years? It is. Not everyone could do that. But to me, that is the way it's supposed to be done. You want to show someone you're a professional that cares about what you're doing, and you do it the right way, behind closed doors, with the management, with the staff of those teams, doing the things you're supposed to do, and he does all of it in a very professional manner, keeps to himself. You can't ask much more from a prospect who has every right to go out and say, look at me from his play, and he doesn't. That to me also shows the intangible character things that we as scouts at home who don't get to be a part of the interview process, who don't get to see the real meetings and in-person meetings that teams have with these prospects in their facilities. We don't get to see all that. But all of those reports, they're not flashy, they're not the headline grabbers that other stuff is. It simply shows a mature young man who knows how to handle his business and provides great notes on character that are very, very hard to find when you are not within an NFL system scouting. So you know you are getting a top-notch, best receiver prospect of all time with the character to match that. And if you do not want to draft Marvin Harrison as a top 5 pick, you're out of your goddamn mind, in my opinion. His tape has just shown he's the most dominant receiver in college football over the last couple of years, and he has every ability to go succeed and be great at the NFL level. A Marvin Harrison Jr. is worthwhile. I've been hearing a lot of mock draft commentary of the Cardinals shouldn't just take Marvin Harrison Jr. They should trade out and go get more assets because they're further away. I think this is a Larry Fitzgerald style case where even at 3 back in the day when they drafted Larry Fitzgerald, a lot of people said, "Oh, they should trade down. They're too far away. They need to," and they stuck because they knew they had a great player on their hands. I think this is the exact same scenario if a team like Arizona can get their hands on Marvin Harrison Jr. I also, as a GM, if the board didn't roll the right way for me come draft night, if I were the Patriots GM and Jaden Daniels isn't sitting there waiting for me to draft, my options at that point, in my opinion, are draft Marvin Harrison Jr. or go trade down. I don't think that anybody has a better right to be at that number 3 position if the quarterbacks do not fall the way you want them. So I would suggest if you don't get the guy you want to roll at 3, you take Marvin Harrison Jr. or you trade the hell back to go get for someone who's going to go get a quarterback or go say, I want Marvin Harrison Jr. on my team. He's the most complete receiver I've ever watched in college football coming into the pros. And it is not close, and he is in a tier to himself. And that is the top 5 rankings of the 2024 NFL Draft for wide receivers. So at number 5, we had Keon Coleman out of Florida State. Number 4, the very explosive and exciting Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. Technically 3, but I said 2B was Roma Dunze out of Washington. Really tough. Big playmaker out of Washington. The 2A, or the 2, if we have to do it that way, is Malik Neighbors, the extremely explosive and exciting wide receiver out of LSU. And as I just got done saying, number 1 out of Ohio State, the most complete receiver I've ever seen, Marvin Harrison Jr. However, I do have a couple honorable mentions to say this. I really liked the tape of a couple other guys, and there are more for me to even watch beyond them. But guys that stuck out to me, number 1, it would be Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy is going to be most known now because of his 40 time, as he is the fastest recorded 40 in combine history. But I think he's actually a very I shouldn't say well-rounded, but I think he is absolutely worth the merit of a mid-first round pick after watching him play. He plays well at his size. His size doesn't really affect him. He has more leap ability and jump ability than he's given credit for. He has better height than people give him credit for. They think he's a spindly little 5'9", 170 player. He's at 172, so the size isn't great and the frame isn't great, but he plays bigger than that, and he's 6'1". There are weaknesses in his game that you wouldn't suspect would be there with things that are related to speed. But his playmaking ability is really, really good. And he just does a great job stretching the field and becoming a threat, and that's great in an NFL offense. I would laugh my ass off. If the Kansas City Chiefs at 32 get Xavier Worthy. Because that's people just being like, I think he's going to bust. Because I know for a fact they're going to make it work with him. I think he's very, very much worth a mid-first round player. And another guy I wanted to shout out, he's a round 2 guy. Early round 2 guy. I think he has merit as a potential late 1, but I personally wouldn't pull the trigger until round 2. Is Georgia's Lad McConkey. He's 6'1", he's 185, but he has a lot of speed to his game and a really, really good role player ability. And this is my favorite note on him. He's the kind of player that is going to relish doing the necessary dirty work. Too often, as a scout or even as a fan, people want to look at the hype, the flash, and they want to say, that's the best guy. Too many guys are great at the flash and don't want to do the dirty work to actually go win a game. I look at players, I'm now going to compare him to a tight end, which isn't fair, but when you see Travis Kelce on the field, Travis Kelce is most dangerous getting you 9 to 12 yards, catching, pivoting, running that extra 4 or 5 to get you a big play. Occasionally it goes longer than that. He makes bigger plays than that. It's not as if that's the only thing he can do. but Travis Kelce does the necessary dirty work to keep the chains moving with Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs offense. There are other slot receivers in NFL history that have been like that. Ladd McConkey to me is a slot receiver, but he's going to relish doing those intermediate 5, 6, 8, 12 yards. That's where he's going to succeed and be really special if he is able to transition well. So I have an honorable mention to Ladd McConkey as well. I watched Adonai Mitchell. I've watched a couple other guys that I don't dislike. I just don't think they separate themselves into higher tiers that those guys do at this time. But I'm going to have some updated stuff possibly in the future before we hit draft time. That is the wide receiver notes that I have going into this year's draft as of recording. As I said, we're going to go over a little bit of review of the quarterbacks, but before we do, you know what? I think it's time for you guys to treat yourself. So, go over to ptcreative.etsy.com and treat yourselves to some awesome new merchandise for yourselves. For the viewing pleasure of our YouTube audience, we're going to just take a little scroll through PT Creative, and you can see awesome products all the way from Pokemon cards, t-shirts, hats, stickers, hoodies. It ranges from fiction to football. All kinds of really cool stuff that you can see here, and more football stuff is coming to the channel, and it is going to be very worthwhile for all of you to see, and I can't wait for you guys to check it out. Please, please, please go over to ptcreative.etsy.com and treat yourself. Use the promo code BLISS, BLIS, at checkout on any order of 2 items or more, and you're going to take 20% off your order. Please go to ptcreative.etsy.com and treat yourself. But back to it. As we move on, we're quarterbacking right now. So as we move to the quarterback rankings, if you are an audio listener, this is going to be a quick recap. If you're a YouTube watcher, appreciate you sticking with the patience for this on this one. So as I stated before, I have an honorable mention of Bo Nix at number 6 for me in the quarterback draft class. I also have notes that I do like as later round prospects in a 3 or even possibly a 2, late 2, Spencer Rattler, and I think a 3 or a 4 could go to Jordan Travis out of Florida State. I think those are good developmental prospects. And I think Bo Nix isn't, as I'm watching Bo Nix play, watching his tape, I'm seeing a player who is a top of round 2 guy, and I can understand a late round 1 pick. Bo Nix is a good quality quarterback prospect. I just don't think he's the creme de la creme that these guys could be in the top 5 as a loaded quarterback class is here. Number 5 on our quarterback rankings this year was Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington. Arm is great. The arm is great, and I do like the height and the frame. And he does a really good job. Does a really, really good job inside the pocket, working within structure. Those are the big positives to Michael Penix Jr.'s game, which puts him at the 5 spot for me. My biggest detractors with him are consistency of accuracy. And I think that's going to come with his footwork. But I will also say on a positive note, he is the most improved player I saw from a footwork and mechanics standpoint throughout the season. Where other guys can get sloppy with their mechanics, he got better as I saw tape on him, getting later from earlier to later in the season. So I have a number 5 with a mid to late first round grade on Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington. Big arm guy. I think he could be a very good player for an NFL franchise. Number 4, we have J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. I like J.J. McCarthy quite a bit, actually. It flabbergasted me that I did, but I liked his tape. Very consistent. Mechanics are great. and super consistent. Very good competitive player, has more arm strength than he's given credit for, but he always looks like he's throwing everything into every ball. So I'm a little concerned about that, but I think he has enough arm strength to succeed at the NFL level. And he's much better athlete and has the ability to run much more than he's given credit for. He is a good athlete that can do all sorts of things, and he knows he can show up in the big moment. JJ McCarthy, when you look, people who want to knock him are going to say, oh, he didn't pass the ball that much. I mean, why you want to get a quarterback like that? The other argument could be made, A, he didn't have to pass the ball because Michigan wants to ram the ball down your throat through the running game, but also B, when he did have to pass the ball, he showed up in big moments and made the big plays. That is an argument that I can see for JJ McCarthy. It's a beautiful throwing motion, nice athlete, as I said, plays well within structure, but has a little bit more gunslinger than he's given credit for. I'm a little concerned about some physical limitations in terms of the arm strength, and I would like him to fill out a little bit more with his frame. However, I think he's a quality quarterback prospect. I have him at 28 to 32, and I'd be more comfortable with getting JJ McCarthy in round 2. But the market is going to dictate. The market's going to dictate that JJ McCarthy may be a top 5 pick. With the way reports are going, it could be smokescreen at this point as well. But JJ McCarthy, I think, is worthy of being the number 4 player. And I like JJ McCarthy, which I think is important to say in these rankings as I get to number 3. My number 3 quarterback this year is Drake May. May is, on the positive side, cannon of an arm, good build, prototypical 6'4", 210, and he's young. I'm sorry, that is Jaden Daniels, 6'4", 230. So really nice size and prototypical size for Drake May coming into the NFL. Like I said, cannon of an arm, does have the ability to throw deep and make really big plays, and he has a playmaker ability to him where he's going to make wow plays. And he can play within structure a lot more than some of his highlights would dictate. My issues with Drake May is accuracy is wildly inconsistent, and he is very raw as a prospect at this point. The nuances, the development of the quarterback, I do not see with Drake May that I see even with the other guys in the class. I think the 4 guys in the top 5 and Bo Nix as well are more complete, ready-to-go players than Drake May is at this point. Again, the tools are there. He could be great if he can get the right development. My issue is my gut tells me if I am going to be forced to say something controversial, my gut tells me the biggest risk of a bust this year is Drake May. I was saving that for another podcast, but doing the rankings for quarterbacks again, I want to give you guys something new. My biggest risk of a bust this year at quarterback is Drake May. I also could see that for JJ McCarthy, but more because of draft stock, not necessarily because that's more of an issue of overdrafting what you're getting versus drafting someone who, by talent and tape, deserves to be there and doesn't pan out. Drake May, by his tape, to me, is a middle to a late first-round player. I can understand him being pushed up. I just disagree with it and wouldn't pull the trigger on Drake May until he was the right time of the board. I would be very consistent with my board and saying if we don't get him at the right time, we're not going to take him. Because I think there's a lot that has to be worked on because the accuracy is just not there for me. And it's very different than like, oh, it was a little off. It was way off at times and boneheaded mistakes at times. So he's a good player in college and he can run around and make some wild plays. And by tape, he merits being higher than JJ McCarthy, but I actually have a more positive feeling about JJ McCarthy to take care of the ball and lead my offense than I do Drake May. But by pure tape alone, I have to say I think Drake May is a better prospect than JJ McCarthy. And that's where I think the honesty of scouting comes in. So at number 3, I have Drake May. Number 2, Heisman Trophy winner himself, Jaden Daniels. Like the height, I think the size is fine. I'd like a little bit more on the frame because it is a little bit slender. But again, the playmaking ability, the speed, and the arm is there. The arm is not elite, but it is very good. He is extremely fluid and shifty as a runner, and he is the true great dual threat quarterback. And I do like the fact that even when he is scrambling, he still at least will have his eyes downfield to try to make a play with the ball in his hands passing than running, but he favors to run a lot in situations of that, which is inherently problematic when you're as good of an athlete as he is. I do have a few issues with his running style, and I think he likes to go downfield a little bit more than work the rest of the field, but he does work the field pretty well. Those would be my concern with Jaden Daniels. But Jaden Daniels to me is top 10, and any other year he's going number 1. That's the evaluation. I think he's a top 10 player in any other year besides a year with Caleb Williams. He's a number 1 overall pick. I think very highly of Jaden Daniels watching his tape. I really like Jaden Daniels, that's why he's number 2. And number 1, it's not a lot much new to say about Caleb Williams because everyone said everything for the last 2 years. Caleb Williams is a one-of-one generational talent. His playmaking ability is second to none. He deserves from the pure talent standpoint, deserves a lot of the comps he's getting. His ability to scramble, make plays, and his vision downfield is unparalleled, and his arm strength is phenomenal. He needs to be coached and put with someone who's going to coach him and calm him down and not make him feel that he has to do everything. That's the biggest concern with Caleb Williams. I don't think Caleb Williams is ever going to bust. I don't see him flaming out and being trash. To me, a flaming out of Caleb Williams is a guy who's a fun starter for 5 to 7 years and doesn't put it all together, which is still a quality first-round pick for a lot of teams. But my only concern is making sure he gets to a coach that's going to tame him to be the best quarterback that he can be and make him feel he doesn't have to be Superman every play. But frankly, he has Superman ability, and rightfully so. That's why he's the number 1 ranked quarterback on pretty much everyone's list. And he is on mine because watching his tape is something to behold. It's really fun to watch. But beyond that, it's quality tape from what he can do as a player. And that was our quick review. I did that. Wow, 10 minutes. Pretty damn good for me. Long-winded motherfucker, so it's pretty damn good for me to get that in 10 minutes. That is also my top 5 quarterbacks in this year's draft. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys watching, or if you're on Spotify listening, thank you to the YouTube audience for being a little bit patient, not getting that video last week with quarterback rankings. You're getting that plus wide receiver rankings this week. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, share this with people, hit the bell for notifications to see when we make new stuff. It helps us greatly for growth and helps us make better content for you over at PT Creative. You can go check us out on Instagram, go check us out on TikTok. If you're not already listening on Spotify, please go to Spotify, give us a rating, help us grow on Spotify. I love the audio medium. Really, I listen to Spotify 24/7. I really like being on Spotify. So please help us out with some growth over there. And finally, go over to ptcreative.etsy.com. Use that promo code BLISS. Buy yourself some merch because you're going to like it. Cool shirts like the one I have on right now, but also cool stickers, cool hoodies, cool hats, all kinds of stuff. Go check it out. ptcreative.etsy.com. But in the meantime, in between time, I'm going to catch you guys next week. More ONETA football show, as always, on Thursdays. Thank you for being patient with the Audible today. I think we still had a great win today. So, without further ado, have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful day. Whenever you're listening or watching, it doesn't matter to me as long as you're having a great day. Peace.